Tyrek Lannister, son of Tygett Lannister and Darlissa Marbrand, was introduced in A Game of Thrones as one of the squires for King Robert Baratheon, serving alongside his cousin Lancel Lannister. Tyrek is described as around Sansa's age, handsome, fair, and well-made, with long golden curls. In A Clash of Kings, we learn that the young Lannister is to marry a baby, Lady Irmisanne Hayford, the heir of House Hayford, so that House Lannister can lay claims to her lands. We also learn the commoners of King's Landing are not so happy about this when they hear of preparations for the wedding feast. Food was already becoming an issue in King's Landing due to the War of the Five Kings, and unrest was growing. When tales of the feast spread, some got it in their heads they should be feasted as well. Why should the lords and ladies have food spread out before them when they were starving? This led to a minor mob forming at the gate of the Red Keep, which I think was a bit of foreshadowing. However, they are all sent running when a party, led by King Joffrey Baratheon, cleared them out. After Tyrek is married to the baby, Lady Hayford, he is insulted by other squires for having such a young bride. The boys ask Tyrek what sort of swaddling clothes his bride wore on their wedding night. But it didn't stop there, because as Jaime Lannister said, boys are the cruelest creatures on the earth. The boys also began to call him Wet Nurse as a joke. Sadly, this soon spread to full-grown men, also calling him that. Obviously a horrible thing to do to the boy, as he was likely a pawn to House Lannister and forced to obey orders. But on the other hand, he now did have rights to some nice lands, so maybe the mockery wasn't that bad in comparison. Unfortunately, we aren't given a look at how Tyrek handles all the mockery. His father was a very proud man, so perhaps if he takes after him, it did wound his pride just a little. Regardless, Tyrek's wedding bliss is soon cut short when the riot of King's Landing occurs. In A Clash of Kings, we see more and more turmoil as Tyrion prepares to defend King's Landing against Stannis Baratheon. Food is short. King Joffrey's douchebag brand of justice is not a crowd pleaser.
Kill him! Kill all of them, I command it!
And the small folk of King's Landing are on a hair trigger. We see this after the lords and ladies see Princess Marcella off to Dorne, and when they are heading back to the castle, they are stopped at the foot of Aegon's High Hill by a woman holding a dead baby. Things escalate, Joffrey gets hit in the face and demands who did it be seized to lick the filth off him, sending the Hound after the attacker, telling him to cut through the small folk to get to him. These cruel demands by the king are not a good idea as the crowd grows angrier, screaming various insults, and then attacks. In the chaos of the mob, many are killed, hurt, or missing. Tyrek is among the missing, last being seen on his horse when the press of the mob had broken the line of gold cloaks and seems to have disappeared without a trace. So where in the world is Tyrek Lannister? Despite being a very minor character in a book full of death and, well, missing characters, many have wondered about the boy. George himself said one day he'll answer what happened to him, but that was many years ago. Can we really hold George to that when it's getting close to 2 decades since he said that? And does it even matter at this point? Will Tyrek serve any purpose? It would be easy to assume that he died during the riot among many others. But then why does George keep laying suspicion that it isn't that simple? For such an unimportant boy, the child of one of Tywin's dead brothers, he is brought up quite a bit by others throughout the books. But of course he is a Lannister, and with Tywin's pride, there is probably no expense being spared trying to find the boy, dead or alive. Many, many men, including hundreds of guardsmen and Varys with his money and his informants, are instructed to look for the squire. But the only thing they find is his horse. No trace of the boy or his body are ever found, which is peculiar. If they pulled the boy down from his horse and slew him, where is the body? The mob had left the other corpses lie on the ground. Why not Tyrek's? It seems odd that he would be the exception. Maybe they decided to eat the boy and put him in some nice brown soup. Or maybe, knowing he was a Lannister and worth a handsome ransom, they kept him alive. But then why has no ransom demand ever been made? No sense taking the boy to ransom him if you never make any demands. One thought is that the small folk did kill Tyrek in the riot, but once they realized they killed a Lannister, they disposed of the body, such as throwing him in a river or eating him, for fear of Tywin's wrath. Tywin always pays his debts. He's proved that over and over for many decades. But is it really that simple? And why can't George stop bringing him up? One of my favorite conspiracy theories is actually thought up by Jaime Lannister. Jaime begins to suspect foul play over his missing relative, and his thoughts drift to Varys. Jaime is well aware that knowledge is more valuable than gold, and more deadly than a dagger. As a squire of King Robert, Tyrek had information that could do a lot of damage, including details of Robert's last day alive, and his death. The Kingslayer is well aware that Varys, with his informers and agents throughout the city, could have arranged for the boy to be snatched during the confusion of the riot. However, Varys would then have to know about the mob that was close to rioting beforehand. Which is interesting because Varys knew everything around the city, so he would likely know of this potential. Even more interesting that he didn't warn Cersei of the riot, and also didn't ride to see Myrcella off. So perhaps he did know, or perhaps he was the one that arranged for the riot to occur. Something that wouldn't have been hard to do with the current atmosphere of King's Landing at that time. If Varys didn't want the boy for information, there could be other plans in motion. If Varys got rid of the Lannisters that come before Tyrek for inheriting the Westerlands, he could have a boy he groomed and controlled as heir to Casterly Rock. This could be to maintain stability in the realm when he puts Aegon, or fake Aegon if you ask me, on the throne. Now, I like the theory that Varys does have the boy, but because I like moderate tinfoil, let's talk about a more intriguing or crazy theory. That Tyrek somehow ended up in Essos and came to the House of Black and White, seeking death. This theory comes from an Arya chapter called The Blind Girl, in A Dance with Dragons. In it, Arya, who was at the House of Black and White and blind at the time, is going through her duty of finding bodies that have chosen to drink from the pool and die. She's instructed to find wherever they laid to die, so their bodies can be prepared. At the feet of the stranger statue, she discovers one of these bodies, and the description we're given of the body may hint that it is in fact Tyrek. Though she can't see, she knows the body would be awash in a ruddy glow from the dark red flame, seeming to point to the red of House Lannister. As she does her job, she discovers the corpse has thick curly hair, much like Tyrek's. She also notices that he has a handsome face with no lines, meaning he's young. Tyrek is young and described as handsome. It is also interesting that Arya can find no wounds on his body, and she wonders why he then hastened his death. When Arya searches the boy's body, she discovers 4 golden dragons from Westeros, not money from Essos. This indicates the boy is likely from Westeros and wealthy. But does this really point to the body being Tyrek's? Why would he even be in Essos? And why did he go to the House of Black and White, of all places? One belief is he was taken by Varys to Essos and escaped at one point. Seems sloppy of Varys, but mistakes can be made. Knowing that Varys would eventually find him, he may have chosen to die instead. Or maybe he left King's Landing after the riots and used his money to get to Essos. His father very much wanted to be his own man and became angry as he grew older that he couldn't escape the shadow of Tywin Lannister. What if Tyrek takes after him? He knew he was simply a pawn of House Lannister and was tormented by his peers for what he had to do for his house. However, if this is true, we don't have a lot of evidence that Tyrek didn't like his position. After all, despite being married to a baby, he was coming into ownership of good land and power. But if he did want to be his own man like his father, after running out of money in Essos, he may have decided to end it rather than return to Westeros to continue to be a pawn in others' games. Another thought I particularly like is he sought the gift of death over guilt in his hand in Robert's death, or what he knew about Robert's death, if he had any hand in it, of course. If Tyrek is in fact the dead boy in the House of Black and White, it has fun future implications. The Faceless Men and Arya now potentially have access to Tyrek's face. If when Arya returns to Westeros, she could use the face to get close to the Lannisters and do some stabby fun. Or maybe the faceless men now have his face and can meddle in the affairs of Westeros, if they choose to. Maybe if the Iron Bank is upset about certain loans not being paid. There is a last major theory that isn't my personal favorite, but I will talk about it briefly. Some believe it was Littlefinger who arranged the riot of King's Landing, or took advantage of it, stealing Tyrek away in the confusion. Or rather, arranging for others to take him away. The thought behind this is Littlefinger is collecting heirs to control the Seven Kingdoms. Some even believe that Sir Byron, described as handsome and young with a thick blonde mane, might actually be the disguised Tyrek. As Sansa considers someone that is 21 awfully old, and she calls Byron young, this could indicate someone in their teens like Tyrek would be. But I think Littlefinger having him is the biggest stretch in the Tyrek theories. However, I'd love to know why you think Littlefinger actually has him, or your own Tyrek theory. So what do you think happened to Tyrek? Is he dead? Does Littlefinger or Varys have him? Was he the boy at the House of Black and White? Will George be true to his word and one day reveal exactly what happened to the boy? Like, subscribe, and let me know your theory in the comment section down below, or further evidence you think helps one of the theories I talked about in this video.